Welcome back to the Partnership Mastermind podcast, where we unpack what actually works in SaaS partnerships. I'm your host, Chris Lavoie. Today's episode is a special one. I'm thrilled to be joined by someone I've learned a ton from personally, Christi Williams, Principal Partner Marketing Manager for Partner GTM Enablement at HubSpot, and an OG alumnus of the Mastermind program. Christi's one of those rare operators who's been on both sides of the MDF table. She's been the smaller fish partner chasing AWS for partner budget, and now she's the one building the enablement, co-marketing, and GTM motions at scale inside one of the most respected ecosystems in SaaS at HubSpot. She's built out the Partner Growth Accelerator, a program that's quietly become one of the most effective partner collaboration engines I've seen, and she's got it live despite being told no from leadership at first. Today's conversation is full of tactical gold for anyone building ecosystem programs inside large orgs. Welcome to the show, Christi.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. I'm grateful to be here.
Amazing. All right, let's get into it. Before we dive deep, I always kick things off with a few quick hitters to break the ice. No wrong answers, just whatever comes to mind.
Let's do it.
Cool with that?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, first things first. What was your first job, and what's one thing it taught you that you still shaped how you work today?
So I started as a waitress when I first entered the workforce, and I think I always tell this story about how someone wanted to order the lobster, and they asked me how big it was, and I didn't know at that time that you go by pounds. 1.5 pound lobster, 2 pound lobster, what it is. And I just kind of made it like a shape with my hands. I was like, about like this big. So I think something I learned is it's okay to say you don't know and you'll get back to someone, or like ask clarifying questions to make sure you're understanding what's asked of you. So that's something I'll take with me forever.
I love that. We've had a few folks who've referenced customer service oriented jobs. My first job was in kind of sales in the sports department, and I learned the hard way. I used to help people pick out bike tires, like avid bikers. And if I gave them the wrong information, they would come back and they would find me. So you gave me the wrong two. So I totally get it. Sweet. Next up, what's a fun fact or hobby most people wouldn't guess about you?
So I think a lot of people know that I'm into sports and stuff, but I play golf, which I think is kind of rare, especially for a female. I grew up playing with my family and still play with my brother today.
Amazing. Care to share what your top ever score was?
You know, it's funny. My brother just had his best score ever. He shot a 78. I think mine's an 88.
Wow.
I dived back into it recently and am chasing that again. So
that's super impressive. I've yet to crack below 90. I'm getting close. I think 92 is my best, but very jealous of that.
I think any day under 100 is a good day. So
well said. I'll take that. Sweet. All right. Now we're going to get more into the partnerships landscape. The next one is, what's one overused partnership play that needs to be retired like yesterday?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think like people need to stop trying to be everything to everyone. I think like, this isn't like groundbreaking, but like not saying yes to everything, but saying no matters too, right? And I think you got to a point, that's a privilege, right? You have to get to that point. But I think it's important that we treat partnerships for what they are, and it's not one size fits all. Like you have different partner types, and then within those types, you have different business models and different goals. So I think, stop trying to boil the ocean and let's focus on one type of partner at a time and figure out the recipe for success there. And then don't rinse and repeat that, because that's not necessarily going to be the recipe for success elsewhere. So just, learn from what you've implemented, and then how do you refine that?
Yeah, I love that. Saying no more often. Do a lot of advising and consulting. And one of the biggest problems I see is just like how people allocate resources. And the biggest resource you have is your own time. So learning to say no is going to be important. And we're going to unpack that a bit more later on today.
My manager is always saying, let's do less better than trying to do more and spread ourselves thin. So I try and hone that in my work too.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent a few business trips in China last year. And one of their favorite philosophies is like slow is steady and steady is fast.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And for someone like me who's like hyperactive, that was a bit of a culture shock. But honestly, after I leaned into it, definitely had a major impact on me.
Yeah, love it.
Sweet. Next up, if you had to give your work style, how you actually operate, a code name, like a spy name, what would it be? And just as an example, I'll give you a second to think. I would say mine is an experimentalist, right? Coming from an academic background, I approach everything like an experiment. Here's my hypothesis. Here's the methodology. Here's how I'm going to measure outcomes. Here's my observations, and here's my conclusion. Right? So curious, what would you give yourself as a code name?
I am going to say something like harmony, because I'm very, very focused on collaboration. I believe in, two heads is better than one. Sharing different perspectives from different experiences tends to get a job done better. So I'm very collaborative in my approach to work. I'm also very communicative. I think especially since COVID and going into this remote first world, there is absolutely no such thing as over communication. Communicate it audibly, in a video, in a slide deck, in a memo, whatever you need, multiple times, Slack messages, emails. So I think it's all about like bringing that harmony of working together, communicating effectively, and tracking that, from an organization standpoint. I think it's important that you're using a source of truth like Asana or, whatever you have in terms of project management to make sure you're all rowing in the same direction because you're a team.
I love that. And I think that, given how much I know about HubSpot, it seems like that's very on brand, right? With how HubSpot's kind of built its own partner program from an ethos perspective. So clearly you fit right in with that. Cool. Last quick hitter is...
When I joined HubSpot, they said, if you're used to being the person in school who did all the work for a group project, you're in the right place because that's everyone at HubSpot. And I was like, yeah, that feels true.
I love that. That is a great one. Cool. Last great hitter for you. Who is one under the radar partner pro that more people should be following or learning from? I'm sure a lot of people will increasingly say yourself. Would love to hear from you on someone maybe that you have a lot of respect for that's pumping out a lot of good content.
Yeah, I would say I'm going to give some praise to my friend and colleague, Justin Gracie. We've been working together since I joined HubSpot 4 years ago. And he really took me under his wing as I didn't have a true manager when I got onboarded. But he is doing so much with AI now. He's really leaning into, and it's not just like ChatGPT, which I think a lot of people who first get their feet wet with AI, like that's kind of an easier one to get into. He's playing with all sorts of tools like Replit and other tools that I can't even name off the top of my head, but he's really leading the way and paving the way when it comes to partnerships too, because when you think about the makeup of our partner ecosystem, there's a lot of marketing agencies and they're like, how am I going to do business when AI is now creating content? Like, how am I selling my services and what does that look like? And so he's really leading the charge for our solutions partners, especially on like what it means to be AI first, but all still being a profitable business that delivers results for your clients. And he's posting a ton on LinkedIn. He's experimenting. And so would definitely give him a follow if you're thinking about AI and what that means for your business.
Love that. We always appreciate a good show. Having seen his content firsthand, I can definitely vouch for that. So definitely give a follow. We'll make sure to include a link to his profile once we publish this. Sweet. All right, cool. Let's zoom out now and set the stage a bit and break into the good stuff. So, you didn't come into partnerships through a traditional SaaS track, right? You had this mix of IT consulting, digital marketing, and agency experience. And then boom, you're suddenly helping run Ecosystem GTM at one of the most partner-led companies on earth. So would love to start with you walking us through that path. What were some of those early pivots that ultimately led you to HubSpot?
Yeah. So I early on in my career, I got into IT. I didn't mean to. I moved to a new city. I needed a job and I started working in a place called Zadar Storage. Worked for amazing manager there, Kevin. And really my first task was implementing a new marketing automation software because they were using MailChimp. It wasn't as robust as it is now. And the sales team was using Salesforce. So anyway, that's how I got into HubSpot is because I started evaluating HubSpot, implemented HubSpot. And then when I was talking to my manager about my goals, I was doing a lot of direct content marketing then and it was generating leads for the sales team. But they were like, well, as a cloud storage provider, we want to work with more managed service providers. We want to work with different, tech providers. So we're actually going to goal you on generating partner leads. So I was actually marketing to two different audiences, customers and prospects of ours, as well as potential partners. And that was really what I was KPI'd on. And so then we started looking at, okay, we're bringing on these partners. What are we going to do with them? And so that's when I got into co-marketing, doing a joint webinar or, doing some sort of presence at a booth. We did a lot of AWS summits and things like that. And then from there, I went to Managed Solution, which was an MSP. So I had been trying to acquire those types of partnerships. Then I got on that other side of it, and they were a big Microsoft partner. And so I worked really close with a girl named Danielle there. She was the head of our channel partnerships there, and I was actually taking her seat in marketing. She moved over into channel because that was growing. And so I learned a lot from her on the marketing side, but then more so on the channel side, because I'd done it a little bit. And like with each role, I felt like I started to do more within a partnership ecosystem. And at that time, I was kind of one of the smaller fish, as I like to say, working with like the big cloud providers like the Googles, AWSs, and Microsofts of the world. So it's been interesting now being on this side, because I've always been a HubSpot fan ever since like 2015 when I did my first implementation. Was drinking the Kool-Aid, wanted to join the club, and I saw this position for partnership, like go to market at HubSpot, and I was like, well, that's interesting. And after I spoke to the hiring manager, they're like, yeah, you'd be a great fit, like having done the work and also worked in partnerships to a degree. And that's how I really got to be full time, and I could take what I learned, from a content marketing perspective and a direct marketing perspective. Now I'm focusing on helping our partners drive demand. So I can take what I've learned from that experience and apply it to the partnerships. And it's just a win-win. I feel like I'm doing what I love. I'm working with people on a day-to-day basis. I'm definitely a people person, helping partners grow their business and using some of the tactics that I've learned. And now pivoting from a little bit with the introduction of AI, and things have changed over the years, but still applying a lot of that fun stuff, like that go-to-market motions.
Thanks for sharing that. Love that journey. And I think it's a good lesson for our audience, many of which are kind of earlier to mid-stage, in that, career paths are usually not linear, and it's hard to kind of chart out your own journey, and you really need to follow your nose, right? So listening to you, you're just focused on becoming an expert in your current role, but then these opportunities naturally expose themselves to you, and then you just kind of capitalize on those, right? And I think it sounds kind of table stakes, but I think in modern times, people are so quick to just want to jump ship. Grass is always greener. They're trying to chart out this perfect track, and they're putting so much stress on themselves. Like, okay, I'm 25 now, I'm 30, I'm 35, I'm 40 now. I should be X, I should be at Y, right? But there's a lot of value in just kind of just leaning into your current situation, even if it's not perfect, and just trying to become the best expert you can. And if you do, things will open up for you, right? Does that resonate at all with kind of how your career journeys happen?
Yeah, I think I got to a point where I hit my 30s, and I was like, what do I want to do with my career? And I was talking to someone, and it was like, it's just as important to figure out what you don't want to do as it is what you do want to do. And I saw myself gravitating towards this partnership stuff that I'd been working on with Kevin at Zadara, but working on with Danielle at Managed Solution. And I was like, I love chatting with people, and helping them achieve their goals. And I actually come from small businesses, so I worked with a lot of HubSpot solutions partners in marketing at the time to help amplify the results of what I was doing. And so I just saw the light of this is awesome. This is an opportunity. And actually, this role was not the first one I applied for at HubSpot. So, it doesn't always happen overnight. It doesn't happen the first job you try and go for. But if there's, you figure out what you like and go for it. And I think eventually things will fall into place if you, are staying on top of those things and keeping yourself accountable and going for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I really hope the listeners heed that advice of just patience, staying at it, right? Just because the company of your dreams or company you're interested in is maybe not a good fit right now or isn't open yet, then stay patient. Definitely advice I give a lot of early stage folks. Cool. All right, that was fun to hear about your kind of journey getting into HubSpot. Now let's dig into what I think is one of the coolest things you've built and been a part of, which is the Partner Growth Accelerator. I don't know if you're calling it the PGA for golf, right? Maybe that's just a coincidence. But in learning about this in our prep, it's clear that this wasn't a top-down initiative. You actually faced some internal pushback at first. So I'd love to hear what made you push forward with it anyway, and what was the pain or opportunity that you were trying to solve?
Yeah, so when I think back a couple of years, I had I work with our solutions partners for those that resell and service around the HubSpot software. We also have an app partner program, which is our technology partners that integrate with HubSpot. And so historically, I've only worked with solutions partners, and at Partner Day, we finally brought solutions and app partners together a couple of years ago. And I was hearing from both solutions and app partners, as a solutions partner, I want to work with app partners. As an app partner, I want to work with solutions partners. And you heard I'm going to email every single partner in the ecosystem. And it's that's thousands of partners. And that's probably not a good approach to finding a good partnership. And then you'd hear I don't know where to start. I haven't talked to anyone. And it's okay, well, we got to meet in the middle somewhere and figure out how to organically foster this collaboration. Because when we dug into the data, we saw that average win rates go up, average sale price goes up, and retention all goes up when a solutions and app partner and HubSpot all work together on our shared customers. So it's a better holistic experience for our customers. Like instead of having 2 sales cycles, you have one holistic approach and one solution. And then, the results speak for themselves in that data. And so that's how it was born of like, how do we foster more of this ecosystem collaboration? And I think like, you look back when HubSpot first started and it was like inbound marketing was this really innovative and new motion. And I think now partnerships aren't like new and innovative, but like they're the way I think to cut through the noise in this world of like, who do you know, who do you trust, and like, how can we build something awesome together? Alex Buckles and I talked about this, and it's like building your moat around your castle, like who's in your moat and that you trust to build that castle up and make something really great.
I think I think it's really interesting how you're pairing solutions and app partners. Obviously, 2 groups that you said don't always collaborate naturally, and you're obviously seeing the outcomes that you'd be looking for. One question I have is, when it comes to major motions or new processes or programs launched internally, it's typically either coming from top down. So some senior leadership meeting happens, they decide on X or Y, and then they mandate that downwards, and then you just do it. Right. And then sometimes it's the front lines, the IC layer, like yourself, who is actually bringing these ideas forward. Right. So which of those 2 applies here? And if you face any friction, would love to just hear a little bit about how you overcome that. And the reason I say that is so many of our audience do have many great ideas, but maybe they don't have the right confidence or a relationship with their manager where they can bring these ideas forward, but be highly persuasive and negotiative to really get that buy-in. So just curious what this all looked like for you internally.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a mix to start. So my manager, Katie Lambert, she had brought this idea to me because we had talked about this a little bit, and we were calling it like a partner-to-partner playbook. And she had some bulleted ideas and thoughts, and she was like, let's figure this out. And I read through like her ideas, and I was like, well, I think this part will work, but this part we need to kind of refine and think through, scope out, experiment. And she's like, I gave you added access, like blow this document up and let's figure out something that's really cool and innovative. And I was like, okay. So I started talking to Kelly Sarabin, who is on the app partner team at HubSpot, because I was like, I need someone, I don't know app partners that well. I don't want to pretend that I do. Like, what do you think about this? And she was like, yeah, like this sounds great. And so we started formalizing this idea of like, this training program where solutions and app partners would come in and like building out what a curriculum could look like. And Katie, and so I share with Katie, she got really excited and she's like, yeah, let's do this. She's like, we just need to get the VP buy-in. And I was like, okay. And one of the things I'd been transparently working on was like executive storytelling and getting that buy-in. It's something I was focusing on in the mastermind group when I first met you. And so I shout out to Lori Acalanti actually at HubSpot. She's on the CS side now. She helped guide me through some different frameworks in the way that you should shape things to a leadership type audience. And so like there's a couple different frameworks that you can use, and it's like, the fear of missing out, like here's where we are today, here's where we should be, and what happens if we don't do these things to get there. Or like using data to back your story and tell that narrative, like so that it's sticky, right? And so I took what I learned from her and some coaching from Katie on like how to best communicate with these specific leaders within the organization, because I think that's important too. Like, do they like Loom? Do they like email? Do they like slide decks? Whatever. So I found out that he is a big Loom guy, keep it short and simple and focus on the data. And so that's when we ran those reports to find out the deeper data on like, the win rates, the retention, like, and there's so much more data that goes into it, just that. Those are kind of the big ones, and put it together in a really concise slide deck. And I was like, here's why we should do this. And he immediately goes, why aren't we already doing this? And how do we do more of it? And I was like, okay, we're going. So it was a collaborative effort, and just taking what I've learned from other leaders within the organization and applying that to his preferred communication style, and showing really what we're missing if we don't go do this.
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm smiling ear to ear because that was really a masterclass on kind of navigating internal channels to get buy-in on something significant. So we can definitely take this transcript, use AI, and publish a little SOP if you'd like. That's how good it was. But 2 things just to unpack there from what Christi said for the audience. First things first is just how awesome it is to have, supportive leadership and management layers who just let it rip, right? Who say, you know what, I'm going to give you feedback, and obviously I'm held responsible to the outcome, so I'm going to push back as needed. But at the end of the day, I want to give you as much creative license as possible to just let it fly and then get a little messy and see what things work. And I know a lot of people listening maybe don't have that luxury, so it's obvious that it's there at HubSpot. But then the other important thing that Christi mentioned was, think about how many individuals she referenced in that excerpt, right? Referencing great people like Kelly, who's a friend of the show. She has her own internal tribe of people who are effectively her internal peer advisory board, who can help her kind of sharpen her ideas, understand how to approach, working up the food chain to get approval. So just wanted to double click on how important it is to have an internal tribe. Does that resonate with you, Christi?
Yeah. So one of the first things that I learned from Katie was, she's got my back. She's in my corner. She's one of the best managers I've worked for. But she was like, you need a manager matrix. I think that's what it's called. I think if you Google manager matrix, it'll come up. But it's essentially like a bingo card. And it's like, here's who I go to when XYZ. And it's all these different things, right? Because Katie's like, I'm going to be as much as I can to be to you, but I can't be everything, right? That's the reality of us as humans. And she's like, so figure out who you can go to for these other things when you want a second opinion or a different perspective or things like that. And so I have this manager matrix of like, I know who to tap for different things. And when I need advice on certain things, those are the folks that I go to. And I've just continued to, I've been at HubSpot 4 years. It started as a list of like 2 or 3. It's probably 5 or 6 now. So like continuing to build that. And it's not just HubSpot anymore. Like through the partnership leaders community, I've gained a lot of folks that I can tap, like yourself, Chris. Like I've recently reached out to you a couple months ago, like, hey, we're trying to figure out crossbait. And like, I know you've dove into this. So, what have you learned? And based on my experience, what do you think we're missing here? So building that tribe, both internally and externally, because sometimes you're too in the weeds internally. It's important to have those external guidance as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. I totally co-sign. And just to restate that for our listeners, right? Really what Christi's referencing is having a Rolodex of mentors and peer advisors. And, a lot of the top performers I know, especially a lot of founders, they have mentors for specific use cases, right? You typically don't have one person who can, support you on all fronts. So I love the manager matrix. I'm definitely going to look into that. But, how can you one at a time find people who can help you with one very specific thing? You're offering value to them, obviously, as best you can. And then they can obviously help you with a very specific use case. So I think that's a great lesson.
Yes.
Sweet. All right, we're going to switch gears here. Now we're going to talk about one of your favorite topics, MDF, or marketing development funds. If you're not familiar, something you're keenly familiar with. Now you've been on both sides, right? Trying to pitch Microsoft or AWS for budget. Now you're the one distributing it at scale inside of HubSpot. So how has that experience shaped the way you've built MDF internally? And as a preface, I've always admired how willing HubSpot is to invest in its partner ecosystem using available tools like an MDF.
Yeah, I think what's cool too, and I don't want to speak for all of HubSpot with this, but I think it's true at least in like the partnership marketing department is like fail fast. Like try something, figure it out. And even if you find 999 ways that it doesn't work, if you find out the one way it does, like I think that's just like tried and true in our department. It's like figure it out and move on if it doesn't work and try the next thing. And it's okay, to fail. Those are lessons learned, right? I think, as I said earlier, being a part of a smaller business, 60, 70 employees, working for the bigger players in the industry, like the AWS and Microsoft, partnering with those folks. Sometimes there's just like a lot of hoops to jump through, in terms of, things that you had to do for getting the marketing development funds, or there was a lot of different sources of information, and it was, kind of all over the place. So what we're trying to do here at HubSpot is like, let's just get what we need out of these partners. Like, let's reduce the barrier to entry and reduce the friction to really just do what we all want to do and drive sales. And so we have like a one-stop shop, our partner resource portal, where they could submit for MDF, where they can get resources like an event planning template. Like, I want to run an event, I want MDF for it. Here's a playbook to how you go do that. Here's a campaign kit where you can download assets and stick your brand on it and it's ready to go. So making it really easy and like trying to like lessen those hoops that you have to jump through, because I remember I would spend hours and hours trying to document things, submit them, all to try and get like $5,000 and then not even get it. And it's like, really? Like, so trying to make it like accessible, making it a benefit for certain tiered partners, but accessible if there's a good use case and not just like chewing away any partner, but making it accessible. And also like, I think the internal enablement's really important too. Like, when you think about our partner development managers, like my team, we're managing partners at scale, and building programs at scale, but we have those partner development managers that are the one-to-one relationships with partners. And like, those are who our partners really, really trust. And those guys and gals are in the weeds day in and day out with our partners. They're awesome. But like, you need to equip them to help the partners too, because we can have all the resources, but there's going to be questions, right? And there's going to be guidance that's needed. So making sure like, not only do we build a program for our partners, but building assets internally, like a best practices guide and a playbook for our PDMs to go and say, hey, I'm going to be able to support you through this because I'm getting trained up on it as well. And so it makes our jobs easier because we're not having to answer to all those partners like day in and day out, because that's the role of the PDM, but also like equipping PDMs to be able to do that is equally important as trying to, educate and enable the partners themselves.
Yeah, I love that. And you can see the harmony kind of code name showing up there, definitely how you describe the cohesion and orchestration of it all, which I love. Just to drill down, when you're allocating MDF today, what is your specific mindset? What makes a pitch fundable, right? I just want to double click on that. And how are you tracking whether it's actually working?
Great question. So what we look for is, do you have a strong promotional plan? Is it a multi-channel approach? Like, you're not just going to send a marketing email or two and hope you drive signups that way, right? Like, it needs to be a cross-collaborative effort. There needs to be a multi-channel approach. You've got to cut through the noise that exists in our reality today. And then, on the back end, it's the follow-up plan. Like, you can go have a great event, right? People can like buzz about it, be so stoked on a great time that they had, inspirational takeaways that they took. Like, as a former HubSpot customer, I used to love inbound for like the inspiration I got from it and the strategies and stuff. But, it's important that HubSpot would reach out to me and say, hey, like, do you want to upgrade from Sales Hub Enterprise or Pro to Enterprise and things like that? So we look for a strong follow-up plan as well, because we do look at, our goal with these events and campaigns to the MDF program is a 4x ROI. And we are seeing that. So part of the like short list of what we require of partners is a lead list. And so, once they run that event, sharing that lead list with us, and we tag that in our back end so that, a solutions partner goes and opens a deal. We can track that in our reporting, in our Looker reporting that says, hey, like, this ROI was generated from this event. And we look at like net new business, which is like our North Star. So net new logos, but we also look at like install base, upsell, and cross-sell, or in-flight deal velocity. Like, did you close a deal quicker because they attended your event? Maybe it wasn't going to close for 6 months, but it closed in 3 because you had this great experience for them at the event. So those are the sorts of things that we're looking for. We look at industry stuff. Like, it's not as important, but like, we want to make sure we're playing in the industries that make sense for HubSpot. And, we want to make sure that we're doing kind of that middle, bottom of funnel content to drive those deals, and not just like top of funnel awareness campaigns.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, any solution partners of HubSpot listening or prospective partners, you just got the blueprint, right, on how to kind of get in on the ground floor. But in my experience, one of the biggest reasons I see MDF programs kind of fail is they're not tracking enough things. So they don't even really know what's working or not. So you're giving a lot of money, and sure, anecdotally, you can kind of assess certain, situations working out. But if you're able to, like HubSpot, have holistic data reporting, within your Looker dashboards, and as you start to sprinkle these MDF funds, it's actually like, it's like angel investing or VC investing. You're investing in some things, and maybe not all of them are going to work out, but when some of them pop, right, that's a really powerful signal that maybe we can reinvest more and more resources into a particular partner type or a particular partner motion within the MDF scope. So I think the key is you need to be tracking, all of the data that you can on where you are investing the MDF. Otherwise, you have no idea on how to measure success and know what to do with those results, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And my other advice with it would be to start small. Like, we piloted this last year and we did a 1-quarter pilot, and we're like, okay, this is working. Let's do another quarterly pilot. And then we did it for another quarter. And then we're like, okay, it's Q4. Like, let's figure out how to scale this for a full year program next year. And that's how it was born. And like, on top of that, starting small with like your approach to MDF in the sense of like we're only doing MDF for events. We do both digital and in-person events, and we typically prioritize in person. But that said, like you're not getting a million different types of proposals coming in, because we do it as an earned proposal, application-based model. There's different ways that you can do MDF, but that's the way we do it. And so, you start to understand what works and what's to look for when you're talking about just events, right? And so, like, don't reinvent the wheel if that's working. Dive into that and keep it niche and focused. And I think you see more success that way. And like right when we first started talking about the MDF program, I was like, I don't know if I agree with that. But now having the experience, it's like, yeah, this was the right way to do it. And I'm glad that, we had the right folks involved to make that decision.
Totally co-sign on the niche approach and kind of testing on small scale before scaling. I think that definitely resonates with myself and our audience. But now let's shift gears to one of your other favorite topics, enablement, as our last topic. And you were pretty honest in our prep discussion. Early on, the onboarding systems were maybe a bit too rigid. So in your estimation, what were some of the early misses and how did you personally pivot to something that scales better?
Yeah, I mean, so when I joined, our onboarding program there wasn't really a program, honestly. It depended, your onboarding at HubSpot really depended on the PDM you got, where you sat in the world, and it just wasn't scalable or measurable. So we're like, well, that's important to have both those things, right? So we did a research and data analysis and asked partners, like, I think this is like so underrated, like talk to your partners, like, and find out what makes them tick, what's their challenges, what makes them excited. It's a free resource for you. Take 30 minutes and connect with your partners. But we basically understood like the onboarding process was just like overwhelming. It was confusing. There was too much. And, you want to try and get them up to speed on everything, but you have to do that in a logical fashion. So we took a step back and we said, what are the most important things for someone to learn when they join the program? And then bucketing those into different categories, because there's like product knowledge is its own thing, but also like, how do your commissions work? And how do you make sure you get paid when you sell a deal, right? There's the operational standpoint. There's all sorts of things that go into it. And so we bucketed those things out and came up with a curriculum, and that was great. But the problem was we did it once a week at the same time every week. And it's like, well, especially for some of these smaller businesses that are like running client calls, if they have a standing client call at that time, like that's not fair for us to say cancel or reschedule that client call and come to this onboarding training. And it was just really rigid. And so we took a step back and we said, how do we meet partners where they are? And so we started coming up with an on-demand version, so that partners could watch it at their leisure, and then having office hours so they could still have an outlet to ask questions about the content that they consumed. And so, I think we had some wins early on, but also realized like the structure that we formatted in was too rigid to meet our partners where they're at. And again, having that open feedback loop is really important to make sure that we can pivot and have a successful program.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think one of the key lessons here for our listeners is meeting partners where they're at, which clearly Christi has demonstrated, whether it's content, playbooks, comms. Obviously, getting feedback is key so you can kind of pivot in real time. Final question on this one is, obviously the program has come so far and you've played a key role in that. How would you characterize like what's next? Like what's the next big unlock, so to speak, that you think would just deliver, a true step function in terms of the experience and value for your portfolio of partners from an enablement perspective?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're talking about now, and this isn't like, breaking news, like, but Crossbeam, right? Like people are starting to use Crossbeam more. And I think it's a tried and true play with other SaaS companies. Like it feels more organic almost. And so the app partner team's been doing it for a bit now, but we're trying to like unlock that at the solutions partner level. And there's some complexities there, right? Because we want to create an equitable opportunity for all of our partners involved, within our program. But that's the next thing that we're trying to unlock is this true co-sell motion with solutions partners, and really having our growth specialists, which is like our account executives, essentially really ingrained in the solutions partner business and creating that trust, right? Because sometimes a new partner comes in, a salesperson, rightly so, will be like, well, I've never worked with them. It doesn't mean they don't do good work, but there's not that level of trust there. So we're trying to bridge those gaps of like, how do we use data and our connections to create a better sales cycle and create more wins essentially, and build that trust with our team. So unlocking the cross-beam motion, I think, is going to be a huge focus for the second half of the year going into 2026. So I'm really excited to be part of it.
That's amazing, man. It's a big deal that HubSpot, the legendary partner program, is going to be leaning into one of the most powerful tools out there. So excited to see how that progresses. So that concludes the bulk of the talk. Just to wrap up, I want to finish on a more of a personal note. You've had a pretty incredible evolution from campaign manager to being seen as a true GTM leader inside a complex org. The final question for you is, what's one mindset shift or habit that has helped you make that jump?
Yeah, I mean, I think like community has been such an important part of my career from the get-go. As I shared, I worked for a lot of smaller businesses to start my career. And so often I was sometimes a team of one. Sometimes maybe I had one or two other folks on the marketing team. And so it's easy to get tunnel vision or, writer's block or whatever you want to say, and to get out of that, it's important that you have a community. And so I used to, as a HubSpot customer, I was part of the HubSpot user groups, which are really great if you're in the HubSpot ecosystem. And that was when I was doing a lot of content marketing and direct to customer marketing. Then I found myself in this full partnership role. And that's when I found partnership leaders, because I was like, where are my partner people? And then alas, I found partnership leaders. So I think it's really important, no matter the size of your team, because now I'm part of a big team and a big organization. I still find value in having a community of getting a different perspective. I think diverse perspectives help bring ideas to life and unpack things that you might not have thought of till it was too late or maybe ever. And so I think just having a community to, we talked about having a manager matrix and that tribe. It's also like folks that are, at the same level of you in your career to learn from as you're going at it together. And I've also learned a lot mentoring people too. So, folks that are junior in their career, I'll work out with someone at the gym and they're like, hey, my son or daughter just graduated college and they want to get into marketing. Will you talk to them? Sure. Yeah. I'm a people person. I love talking about marketing. I'll share with you what I learned so you don't have to learn the hard way. You're still going to have your own lessons to learn, right? But I think there's something about learning from mentoring, but also having your peers and then also your own mentors as well. And just creating that community for yourself has been really such an important piece for me. And I still have so many relationships that I, cultivated back in the early 2010s that I'm still, friends with or collaborating with today. So definitely recommend finding your community and leaning in.
Amazing. I mean, I don't know how you could listen to this episode and, have any other feeling other than just how important it is to start building that community. And it's easy to see people like Christi candidly and say I'm so jealous of that. How could I possibly get to that state? I think you'd agree, Christi, you just have to start, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It honestly takes years to get to that type of point. And Christi's not done, right? I'm sure there's places in your community development that you want to get to. So I think that's a great lesson. And particularly I loved, how you called out mentor other people. I literally had several messages this week from alumni in the mastermind community who were saying, hey, Chris, I'm looking for a mentor. What advice do you have? And I actually started to say, well, I think you need to start mentoring, right? It's going to teach you what you are looking for in a mentor, but it's also going to help you learn yourself. So I'm glad you brought that up. But
yeah.
We're at time here. For folks listening, where's the best place to follow you or learn more about what you're building at HubSpot?
Yeah, check me out on LinkedIn. I've been trying to post more on there. I created a Claude project with my tone of voice to help me expedite some concentration while still making sure me as a human is behind it. But yeah, check me out on LinkedIn, Christi Williams. Would love to connect and talk about different go-to-market plays that work for your partners.
Amazing. We'll be sure to link up Christi's profile when we publish this, wherever you listen to these episodes. But Christi, seriously, thanks again for everything you do. Thanks for being a part of this ecosystem. Thanks for being a friend and part of our community. And really appreciate this episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. Always love chatting with you.
Awesome. All right, take care until next time.